Hello, everyone, and welcome to Focus on Fellowships. I'm Dr. Ericka Boone, Director of the NIH Division of Biomedical Research Workforce, and today I'm joined by the incomparable Dr. Alison Gammie from the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. This Focus on Fellowships webinar series will be broken into segments where we'll discuss topics such as how to identify fellowship opportunities, the revised review criteria associated with NIH fellowships, and more. So today, our focus will be an introduction to NIH fellowship opportunities. The NIH's mission is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. NIH is the largest public funder of biomedical research in the world, and it's made up of individual institutes and centers that are focused on unique research priority areas. From fundamental cell biology research to clinical cancer studies to tool development to healthcare delivery, your research probably fits within NIH's research priorities. You can read more about the science that NIH supports on the NIH Reporter site. In fiscal year 2024, NIH issued over $35 billion, that's with a B, in funding through almost 60,000 grant awards to more than 2,700 universities, hospitals, small businesses, and other organizations. About $1 billion went to support research training, including fellowship programs. NIH is deeply committed to fostering the future of the biomedical research workforce and offers a whole host of programs intended to help train tomorrow's biomedical research scientists. And with this in mind, let's bring on Dr. Alison Gammie so that we can begin our discussion of NIH fellowship programs, its goals, and how to find funding opportunities that might be right for you. Welcome, Alison, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Ericka. It's great to be here.
Alison, we're talking about NIH fellowship programs, one of our favorite topics. Can you tell us a little bit more about what NIH fellowship programs are intended to do and more about their goals?
Sure, Ericka. NIH fellowships are designed to provide mentored research training to individuals to gain skills and experiences that are needed to transition into careers in the biomedical research workforce. Fellowships provide a stipend and an institutional allowance that will help support the costs of training, tuition, fees, and childcare costs that are incurred by the fellow. Fellowship programs vary, so candidates are encouraged to read about the specific benefits that are described in each notice of funding opportunity. Most of the NIH-funded fellowships are provided through the Ruth L. Kirstein National Research Service Award, also known as the NRSA program. Some institutes and centers also participate in non-NRSA fellowship programs.
Well, thank you, Alison. That information is very helpful to know, especially for our individuals who don't know a lot about NIH programs. So what fellowship programs does NIH offer, and what kind of supports are they intended to provide?
At the predoctoral level, NIH offers at the F30, that's for dual degree students, and the F31 program for PhD students. The F31 supports individualized mentored research training for individuals that are enrolled specifically in a PhD program, while the F30 is designed to support the integrated research and clinical training needs of predoctoral students formally enrolled in dual degree programs. And the goal of this program is to prepare these individuals for careers as clinician scientists.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question since we're talking about our predoctoral students. Many of these individuals tend to worry about whether their applications are going to be competitive. Some of them haven't published before now, and they worry that maybe it's not worth it for them to be applying until they do. What advice would you give these individuals?
Ericka, we hear this concern all the time, and we know that candidates do a lot in the course of their research training that may not make its way into a publication. So candidates should highlight in their application any relevant activities or research products that they've been involved with. A peer-reviewed article isn't the only metric of accomplishments at this career stage.
I completely agree with you. And I think that some students tend to forget about some of the mentoring and leadership opportunities that they're engaged in as well, that are all relevant for their future careers. Thank you so much for highlighting that. All right, so let's move on a little bit more. We're talking about our fellowship programs, rather, for our postdoctoral students or individuals at their postdoctoral phase.
Yeah, so we'll start out with one that's a transition award, and this is for pre-doctoral candidates that are interested in pursuing a mentored postdoctoral position. And certain NIH institutes and centers offer this program, and it's called an F99K00, and it's designed to support students across that transition from pre-doc to postdoc. These transitional awards provide 1 to 2 years at the pre-doc level and up to 3 years of mentored postdoctoral career support.
Okay, so I have a question about the F99K00. Are individuals that are awarded the F99 required to also apply for the K00 separately?
That's a great question. No, it actually, you come in together with one submission. So the second stage doesn't require that you go back through the submission process, but it does require a level of administrative review on the progress and then the plans for the postdoctoral phase, just to make sure that things are in alignment with the original application.
Okay, so we've talked a little about that transition from pre-doctoral phase to postdoctoral phase, but what about opportunities for individuals that are applying after starting their postdoctoral training?
So at the postdoctoral level, we have the F32 NRSA program. And this is, again, a mentored fellowship program, this time at the postdoctoral level. And many of the institutes and centers at NIH participate in this particular program.
Well, thanks so much. So we talked about advancing from the predoctoral phase to the postdoctoral phase. Is there anything available for individuals that are beyond that postdoctoral phase?
Yes, actually, there is a fellowship opportunity for more senior scientists looking to expand their skill set or change the direction of their research. And they can apply for what's known as the F33 NRSA fellowship. So this is typically for 2 years of training, and in most cases, these awards are made to support, for example, a sabbatical training experience for faculty.
All righty, we're hearing about our programs, our F30, our F31, our F32, and our F33 has all been amazing, but there are eligibility requirements that we should be talking about before the process of applying. So what are some details that individuals should know or keep in mind as they're going through or approaching the application process?
Yeah, Ericka, you're right. Every program has different requirements that need to be taken into consideration before applying. So we can't emphasize enough how important it is for candidates to read each funding announcement carefully for the requirements. In the case of NRSA fellowships, training can be conducted at domestic institutions and also in some cases in foreign institutions if extremely well justified. The fellows themselves are required to be U.S. citizens, non-citizen nationals, or lawful permanent residents by the time of the award. And this, again, this is for the NRSA programs. Training can be for ranging from basic science through clinical research, and it really depends on the area of science and the participating institute or center. So once again, we encourage candidates to reach out to the relevant scientific contacts that are found in the funding announcements to ensure that their research is within the mission of the particular NIH institute that the candidate will be applying to.
Okay, so we've talked about the programs, we've talked a little bit about eligibility criteria. You just said that individuals that are interested in programs should find out more by talking to their scientific contacts or program officers. With so many programs and with so much information learned, how does a person find a funding opportunity that might be, relevant for them and their next steps?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Erica, to sort out the opportunities. So individuals can find notices of funding opportunities, often called NOFOs, and those are found on the grants.gov website. So this is a federal government clearinghouse for all grant opportunities. But remember, if you as the candidate are specifically interested in the NIH grant ecosystem and how it works, you should always talk to your mentor, your research mentor, as well as the Office of Sponsored Programs. And these individuals can really make your grant search a lot easier and help you understand the system.
That's a really good point that you've made about basically that there is a community of individuals or a network of individuals that will help to support your fellowship application or individual's fellowship application. So make sure that you keep that in mind when applying. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to be an island. There are built-in supports in your environment, which includes NIH, to help you to successfully apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically to drill down on grants.gov, if you as a candidate are searching based on criteria such as the funding agency, in this case it would be the NIH through Health and Human Services, you can also search on keywords. If you know the opportunity title, or F31, F30, for example, you can put those in as well. If you know the number of the funding opportunity, even better. That's a pretty fast way to get it, and dates as well. So as an example, if you search for the F31 fellowship at NIH, your search would return one or more opportunities. And then clicking on the opportunity number would bring you to a grant opportunity page. And this will have basic information about the program. And there's always a link to the full funding opportunity that's found in the additional information heading of each page. Upon opening the funding opportunity, you'll see right at the start the list of participating institutes and centers. And this is really key to make sure that the research that you are working on is in alignment with the participating institutes and centers. Make sure the institute or center that you plan to apply to is included at the top of that funding announcement. And if so, then your research is likely to fit in and be eligible for you to apply.
Now, I want to pause right here because
Sure.
you made a very important point. You want to make sure that the institute and center whose research where your research fits under their research priorities are listed on a notice of funding opportunity, because what we don't want you to do is to spend a lot of time developing and then submitting your application only to find out that the institute and center that would fit best with your work doesn't even participate in that particular funding opportunity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Erica. To go back to the grants.gov, if you keep reading, you'll also find things such as any related notices, for example, earlier releases or related policy or any other type of update. That's always important to look at those related notices. You'll see the statement of purpose. And then you can also read more about the application requirements. And finally, towards the end of the funding announcement, you'll get details about the review process. So saying it once again, it's really important to read the full announcement to get critical information. This includes things like the dates of application due dates, information on how the application will be reviewed. And then again, at the end of the funding announcement, typically you have the NIH scientific contacts that you can reach out to if you have any questions.
So thank you so much, Alison. This information is so very helpful and so very critical as individuals are approaching the application process. Read is something that I keep hearing you say over and over again. So as we are winding up our first episode of Focus on Fellowships, and before I let you go, what are a few takeaways that you'd like for our potential applicants to remember as they're coming into this process of applying for a fellowship?
Yeah, sure. So program officers tend to get a lot of questions about when and how to apply. In general, and specifically for the NRSAs that we've been talking about, they follow agency-wide due dates. And of course, that depends on the type of program. But for the NRSA fellowships, applications are typically due April 8th, August 8th, and December 8th for most applications. If the candidate is submitting an AIDS-related research project, training project, the due dates are May 7th, September 7th, and January 7th. The NIH grants and funding site has a lot of information about submission policies. For example, if the due date falls on a weekend or holiday, the typical due date. But having said that, no matter when the due date is, it's always extremely important to apply at least a few days early. And this is just in case there are any kind of technical problems. It's really rough to be right up against the deadline and find out that there was a technical difficulty.
Oh my gosh, the last thing you want to do is to prepare this entire application and then wait to press the submit button at 11:59 p.m. and then there's a problem and no one at NIH to talk to at that time.
Yeah. Do whatever we can to avoid that.
Yes.
Definitely. And candidates are able to apply through several mechanisms. There's something called NIH Assist. There's also grants.gov that I mentioned. And some organizations have systems-to-system application processes set up. So that's why it's always important to speak with one's mentor or the Office of Sponsored Programs, who will know all of the details about the best way to submit the application. And of course, they have a lot of experience with the process and can help. And before I go, I'd like to mention important thing that NIH has made some significant changes to both the fellowship application itself as well as the review process. And these changes have been rolled out in 2025. And these will affect all fellowship applications going forward, starting with the upcoming August due date.
So, Alison, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because the community has been asking a lot of questions about revisions. So what should candidates and their sponsors keep in mind regarding these changes, and where can they learn more information besides focus on fellowships?
I just want to start by saying that, we want to reassure candidates not to be worried about these changes. They're really designed to simplify the application and to improve the chances of individuals across a broad spectrum of institution types will be recognized in the peer review process. So the new process, as I mentioned, is designed to make applications easier to prepare. However, just as a warning, candidates that are reapplying, if they applied previously and then they're coming up to this August deadline, they really need to potentially do some changes to the application. And they should be sure that they're following the new instructions and using the new forms to submit their applications. You mentioned where they should go for guidance. It's always important to go to the NIH grants and funding website, and that's you'll see as lots of resources to help with this new process.
You are so right about that. And here at NIH, we really are trying to provide as much information and resources we possibly can to make the process of applying much more easy for individuals to be able to follow so that they can have a successful application, process. Alison, thank you so very much. This is actually a great segue to what we're going to be highlighting in our next Focus on Fellowships webinar that's coming later on this summer regarding tips and advice for candidates. So hopefully with today's episode of Focus on Fellowships, we have answered a lot of questions that we know that potential applicants and their sponsors may have about NIH fellowships and a little bit about NIH's revised fellowship application process. NIH fellowships are an awesome opportunity for early career scientists that are seeking additional training. And I hope that we've encouraged a few more of you out there today to apply to the upcoming or during the upcoming application cycle.
Well, thanks for having me, Ericka. It was a pleasure to talk about the fellowship program.
Thank you for being here, Alison. And thank you out there for joining us on today's episode of Focus on Fellowships. For more information on NIH fellowships and NIH's other grant programs, you can follow us on LinkedIn, on X, YouTube, and also listen to the All About Grants podcast that we have on fellowships and other grant opportunities. You may also visit grants.gov to explore NIH's funding opportunities and visit the NIH Grants and Funding site for more on NIH's various training and career development programs. Join us next time as we discuss the ins and the outs of the fellowship application. Have a great day.